July 17th. July 17th, 2014 is a day that I will not forget anytime soon. I was flying that day from Xiamen down to Kuala Lumpur. I brought my camera and smartphone along, hoping that I could catch a few interesting shots from the cockpit, maybe some pretty scenery, all those good things. Indeed, I was expecting to catch a scene or two like this pretty scene of a glory taken out of the window of the 737. But that's not the way things actually worked out on July 17th, 2014. For one thing, there was bad weather south of Hong Kong. As you can see on the nav display, there's a typhoon. That's to the left of the airway that we were flying between Mbok and Epcal waypoints. You can see that we're in heading select, maintaining 360 and VNAV path, and maneuvering around that weather. It was not an especially strong typhoon, but there were some thunderstorms out there, and we needed to circumnavigate them and then get back on track and make our way down to Kuala Lumpur. We were running late that night. As you can see by the estimated times of arrival across those waypoints, we were flying in this area well past 10 p.m. In fact, estimating Epcal at about 10:22 p.m. China time, 1422 UTC. We didn't know it at the time, but Malaysian Air Flight 17, MH-17, had already been shot down. It was burning on the surface in Ukraine, in the area to the east that was contested. At any rate, there's a photograph. I thought the worst thing of the evening would be the typhoon and bumpy weather till we got south. But no, we arrived in Kuala Lumpur, and our handlers, who in fact were Malaysian Airlines, they were visibly upset about something, and they told us one of their planes had been shot down. Now, they already had a gray cloud over their heads over the loss of MH-17, which had disappeared earlier in the year. And here, another 777 is lost, this time due to a missile. I went to the hotel, which is attached to the airport, dropped off my bags, looked at the news, and was very, very offended by the things I was seeing on the international news, the BBC, and also on the internet. Social media was showing a lot of video clips of firefighters standing in a sea of dead bodies, spraying the burning wreckage. And then there were other video clips of ragtag soldiers walking around in the fields and around the wreckage, looting the bodies, and sometimes just showing off the dead as though they were trophies. Enemy dead. They absolutely had no sympathy at all for the dead passengers on MH-17. Being rather restless, I put on my shoes, jeans, a t-shirt, and went for a walk in the terminal. It was about 2:30 in the morning when I was circling around outside of customs and immigration and looking at the arrivals board, taking pictures. You can see the very nice information display that's set up at Kuala Lumpur Airport. Shows a satellite picture, weather. Now, in real time, it's dark outside. There are lots of bright lights indoors, video screens, advertising. This one shows weather in the area. That's pretty good. And on the right side, There's information on incoming flights. Looking a bit more closely, you'll see that MH-17 code sharing with KLM as Flight 4103, that's still listed here, estimated to arrive at 6:10 in the morning. That's an automated listing that's usually updated as the aircraft gets closer to landing. I thought it was a rather strange and eerie thing considering what was going on, so I took a picture of it to save it as a reminder that some really bad shit can happen sometimes. As the morning went on, the sun came up. People started to come into the terminal building, and the airport authority put up an information screen at the monitors. And this is it. Simply says, "Pray for MH-17. Malaysia Airports is deeply saddened over the MH-17 tragedy. Our thoughts and prayers are with the families and friends of the passengers. The Family and Friends Reception Area, FFRC, and Family and Friends Holding Area, FFHA, are located at the viewing gallery level 5, behind the stage area, near the Old Town White Coffee restaurant, at KLIA main terminal building. Next of kin can also call Malaysian Airlines at 03-7884-1234 for information on flight MH-17. That was up for at least a day and into the morning of the second day after the shoot-down. Here's a picture of a sign directing people to the Family Friend Reception Center and the Family Friend Holding Area. In fact, that area was staked out by news media. We would see people walk in ones and twos and then come out later. As they emerged from either the reception center or the holding area, they would be swamped by press asking them who they are, what their connection was to people on board MH-17. Lots of bright lights, cameras, and rather chaotic at times. I was on a one-day layover, so I simply grabbed a coffee and sat and watched. Indeed, here is a crowd at work asking one person several questions about their connection to MH-17. Lots of press, tripods, lights. The rest of us standing around observing or drinking coffee. Here's a view of the stage and the entrance to the FFRC and FFHA areas. This person wearing blue and white is actually a BBC reporter who was reporting on the shoot down and how it's being dealt with in Kuala Lumpur. And she had her equipment on a luggage cart and a set of bright lights and technicians over here. Lots of cabling. This is what it was like in the terminal at KLIA the day after the shoot down. That's July 18th. Losing MH370 and MH17 wasn't easy on the people of Malaysian Airlines. Upstairs in the terminal building, they had set up a shrine, and this shrine remained there for months after MH17 was down. Sometime late in the year 2014, or perhaps it was early 2015, they did take the shrine down. But here's a photograph of what it looked like. In Ukraine, the offensive news always was that the crash site and the debris fields, multiple debris fields, were not secured. They were not protected. In fact, people had come over to the cockpit, which you see here and in some other pictures that I'm going to show you. They came over and took the bodies of the pilots out, carted them away, and then medical personnel went into the bodies trying to take shrapnel out, removing evidence. But that's really hard to do because there was shrapnel all over the place in the forward cabin and cockpit, hiding the fact that it was struck by a missile. It's just about impossible to do because there was so much shrapnel. To be more specific about what we're looking at, this is actually the area underneath the cockpit floor. It's called the E&E bay. And here are radios, computers, various electronics. And there is one of the nose wheels, one of the tires on the nose landing gear. This possibly is blood and flesh. It's about the right color. So there's the E&E compartment, lots of metal connectors and equipment. That airplane was bashed all to hell. It's interesting when you look at maps of where the debris fell. The nose section was separated from the aircraft and came down here, as you see in the picture. Now, the back sections of the airplane broke up as well. It appears to me that it did something similar to TWA 800. And if you understand weight and balance and aerodynamics, not at a PhD level, but the kind of aerodynamics that you will certainly know if you fly an aircraft, is that when weight is abruptly removed from the front of the aircraft, it is then out of balance. There's no longer a down moment forward of the center of gravity. There's a balancing down moment normally from the horizontal stabilizer, and that's how the pitch of the airplane is controlled. When you take off the front of the airplane, forces become unbalanced, and that horizontal stabilizer will push the tail of the aircraft down. The aircraft will pitch up around its center of gravity, which in fact is moved aft, and the wings, being abruptly pitched upward, are going to have sudden increase in lift, and they'll probably break. To be moving at jet speed and have an abrupt pitch up like that, that's enough to cause the wings to break. And in fact, on MH-17, one wing separated from the aircraft, the other wing stayed attached to the fuselage, and the aircraft began to fall downwards. It broke up more. There was actually a center section. The aft fuselage separated and came down somewhat separated from the center section.
This looks like it was the front of the plane. The pilot's bags are up here, and this came down, this section, several miles from the other major impact sites. It looks like this part of the plane came off separately. One of the things you see here are charts and flight plans and the kind of tremendous forces that just tore this plane apart. You also see, when you begin to look closely, those small pockmarks that investigators will look at, the kinds of things investigators will be asking: is this shrapnel? Is this damage from the catastrophic breakup of the plane? And here is the cockpit window. This is the kind of thing investigators are going to look at. Is this shrapnel damage? Is it damage from the breakup of the plane? And has the wreckage been tampered with? We have heard reports from the international team of monitors that they saw people on this site cutting into the wreckage with power tools. All those things are the kinds of challenges.
3 local lads wanted us to see something, an alien object in this bucolic landscape, the first of so many. Blimey. Blimey. So this knot of twisted metal and wires was the cockpit of flight MH17. Look here, you can see the dashboard, or bits of the dashboard over there. The control panel. That looks to me like the joystick, or part of the joystick. This was one of the pilot's seats here. Here. This is where the pilot would have sat, or the co-pilot. God knows where he is now. And what's so extraordinary is that all this in the middle of a field of sunflowers, guarded by no one. There is no one here from any international agency, from the local authorities. Just a couple of villagers. Some of them have lain flowers. Some of them have come to look in disbelief of what happened here. But this was the cockpit of MH17.
That big fire that you see in the news reports is the center section, which had a lot of people in it. It struck the ground upside down, and hence the views of the inverted wing, landing gear, and that really nasty footage of the firemen standing in a sea of dead bodies, spraying the fire, trying to put it out. The missile that shot down MH17 is believed to have come from this Buk missile launcher, which is shown here on a truck being carted away very quickly. These guys were getting the hell out of town, but there's a missile missing. The Buk normally carries 4 missiles. 2 over here. The view is somewhat obstructed, but this would be the, say, 1 back there, a second one. Space for the third is missing, and then there's this other one on the end. Or if you want to count the other way, 1, and number 2 is missing, number 3, and then number 4 should be on the other side. But this is from some camera footage, and it is believed to be the launcher that sent the missile up that hit MH17. There are more photos and short video clips of this thing on the move, as well as other footage of this Buk launcher system, actually, not just this, but other parts of the system being brought into Ukraine shortly before the shoot down of MH17. It is believed that a Russian missile crew operated this, and they scooted out quickly to avoid prosecution. Do your thoughts and prayers if they make you happy. Never forget this: justice keeps the peace. A great deal of the fighting over there is because people of Ukraine want to live in a just country, and they do not want to be forced into the Russian sphere of influence, where there is a lot less justice. Justice keeps the peace. On Twitter, Darth Putin has a comment to make. On this day in 2014, MH17 shot itself down with the Buk system the rebels, in quotes, suddenly denied they had admitted having. Here's a history of our MH17 propaganda that shows we don't do it so you believe something. We do it so you believe nothing, and more importantly, do nothing. It works. Now see, this is the crux of disinformation. This is the crux of Russian disinformation, and in fact, Republican, MAGA, and QAnon disinformation does the same thing. Flood the area with shit, and people will just stop voting. They'll stop taking action against you. So here it is, a short history of MH17. Version 1, 2, 3, 3 again, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sane people insist it was a Russian Buk that shot down MH17. The trolls and pro-Russian talking points constantly change. It was a rebel-captured book that shot down a cargo plane. It was a Ukrainian Su-25. It was actually MH-370 and was piloted by a suicide crew. It was a 20mm radar-guided gun. It was a Ukrainian Su-27. It was a bomb. It was a book, but Russia doesn't have that type anymore. TBC. To be continued. So Darth Putin is entirely right. If you follow Bellingcat, you will see they have a whole history of all of the excuses that Russia has offered in defense of itself against evidence that they were behind the MH-17 shootdown. While we're on the subject, let's take a look at some postings on the Twitterverse as MH17 is remembered this July 17th, 8 years later. Sergei Sumliny is a pretty sharp fellow. This gentleman is really on the ball. You should follow him if you're going to follow anyone on Twitter. He says, on this day 8 years ago, Russian army shot down Malaysian MH17 Boeing, killing 313 people. And I think he might be incorrect on that number. My understanding is that it's 298, which includes the 15 crew members and the passengers. So I am somewhat in dispute of this number, but maybe I'm wrong. Russian terrorists made happy photos with debris as a background, and their girlfriends looted the site for cosmetics and proudly wrote about it on social networks. Yeah, this was one of the most offensive things about MH17, the looting of the bodies and the just walking around in the wreckage, disregard for human life, and taking pictures of the dead. So here is a cosmetic item looted from a body. This was taken sometime after the shootdown, as these fighters are wearing winter clothing, posing in the wreckage like it's some kind of victory or trophy. As to this looting here, mascara from Amsterdam, to be precise, from the field. Well, you understand. Indeed, that is a grotesque post. When one of her followers asked how she got her hands on the item, she said, "Oh, a friend scavenged it from the site of last week's crash, which killed 298. Here's another shot of rebels posing in the wreckage of MH17. That is some offensive shit. Now, Sergei does tell us here it was not the first Boeing of an Asian airline that Moscow shot down and then denied it. In 1983, a Soviet Su-15 shot down Korean Air 007. I remember that. They shot down Korean Air 007 very callously. It was a flight from New York to Seoul via Anchorage. 269 people were killed. The Soviets denied this kill exactly as in the MH17 case. And in this case, when they were presented with evidence, they just denied it and made more excuses. Moscow's lies were identical to the lies about MH17. We did it not... What? We did not shot it down. There was a CIA-planted bomb on board. No alive people were on board. It was a spy plane, etc., etc., etc. And believe it or not, this was not the first Boeing that Moscow shot down. In April 1978, Soviets shot down another Korean Boeing 707. this time. It was Korean Air 902 on its route Paris, Anchorage, Seoul, this time over the Kola Peninsula. A Soviet Su-15 shot an air-to-air missile at Korean Air 902, instantly killing 2 people. The crew managed to land the airplane on a frozen lake. 13 people were injured. Well, that's fantastic that they got down. That is some beautiful airmanship. Look at this. They landed on the frozen lake. Probably skidded. Went to the right. They hit some trees here, but not super hard. And came to a stop. The airplane is largely intact. Notice here there is some damage on the left wing, and apparently the left engine has some damage. It's hard to tell whether this was from the landing or from the missile strike. This was a miracle, I believe it. It was the only case in world history as a passenger jet hit by an air-to-air missile was safely landed by its crew. The captain of Korean Air 902 was Kim Cheng-kyu, a veteran of the Korean War, a retired colonel of the Korean Air Forces. So this must be him. There is a guy who should never have to buy his own beer ever again. Make him a member of the Dedalians, if not already. Here's a shot of the aircraft, 707, with the classic Boeing nose section. Leading edge flaps extended, and then slats out here. Landing gear collapsed. But still, this airplane is in one piece. Pretty good. Now, take a look here. This is the left wing. Notice that there's considerable damage on the left wing. This might be the number 1 engine, the far left engine. It's hard to tell. There's some other stuff here that looks like maybe the inboard engine is in there. But that's some very serious damage on that left wing. It had to have been a real mess to fly. This is way worse than having an engine out. There's a loss of lift. There's a lot of drag. Airplane wants to yaw and turn to the left. I bet those homies had their feet hard on the right rudder, banking into the good side. A lot of power on the other side to keep this airplane flying. This would be like the engine out from hell, because it's more than just an engine out. It's also damaged wing. Now, here's another post from Sergei Sumliny. The Soviets arrested the crew and held them for the week until they were pardoned and then released them. The Soviets also requested Korea to pay a bill of 100,000 USD as cost reimbursement. Korea denied. Moscow has also stolen the wreck itself and used it for reverse engineering. I guess they wanted to know how a 707 was made. To steal the technology, huh? How about that? And that wasn't even the first case. Here we go. On June 14th, 1940, months after a Soviet-Finnish winter war, the Soviet Air Force shot down a Finnish civil plane, Ju-52 KLIA, Route 1631 from Tallinn to Helsinki over the Gulf of Finland. They killed 9 people. I presume this is the aircraft before the shoot down. Amid 6 passengers of the KLIA flight, there were 1 U.S., 2 French diplomats, transporting about 200 kilos of diplomatic correspondence. KLIA was shot down by 2 Soviet DB-3T light bombers on their routine patrol. A Soviet submarine, SHCH-301, emerged at the crash and looted it. Here we go, looting a crash site again. that's not the first time. The looting crashes has happened before. I remember back in 1987, a Northwest DC-9 crashed at Detroit, and there were reports that people around the crash site had gone to the wreckage and looted some of the luggage and personal effects from the dead before the authorities were able to cordon off the scene. That's at Detroit. I presume Detroit Metro Airport. So there's a history of that through the years. Now back to this. About 100 kilos of diplomatic post and currency in cash were looted and urgently transported to Soviet naval base in Kronstadt. The Soviets denied everything as usual. The bomber's crew said they were provoked by passengers of the KLIA. They were threatening them by showing fists. Are you kidding me? Passengers on a civilian flight put their fists up to the windows and you were provoked and you shot down the plane? Give me a fucking break. In 3 days, the Soviets invaded and annexed Estonia. From this perspective, shooting down foreign civil planes and denying it amid preparing aggressions and annexations of neighboring nations is Moscow's proud tradition since at least 82 years. So there we go. First, there's hostility, then a shoot down, and then an invasion. There's a bit of artwork for you. Russia is a terrorist state. And then several comments. Many comments. Okay, now Sergei has some things to say about factors in this game. Number one, life costs nothing in Russia. Violence is seen as a good solution for any problem. Number two, personal responsibility or dignity are not popular ideas. So the boss just gives orders and subordinates follow. People think short term. Well, there it is. That's the authoritarian mindset for you. Continuing down, there are several more comments. The Kremlin myth of Ukraine separatists has been aiding Russia in its aggression since 2014, but there are no homegrown separatists in Ukraine. Yeah, that's right. They're all Russian. Fuck them. So here are these assholes again on wreckage, probably stepping on some human remains. Because remember, there were bones and things that were still in the dirt and around this wreckage for months and months and months after the crash. Crude comment about the person there. Now, here's a person who wrote a thread about Korean Air 007, and he's got some grotesque details in his own thread. We're not going to go there. There just isn't enough time right now. But he does have something to say. This is from the investigation. Here's a bit of dialogue between General Kornyukov to the military district headquarters. I believe this is radio traffic that was intercepted. He was told to destroy it, and he's asking the questions. Destroy it? Are the orders to destroy it over neutral waters? Oh well. And then this Kamensky person says, we must find out. Maybe it's some civilian aircraft or God knows who. The general says, what civilian? It's flown over Kamchatka and came from the ocean without ID. I'm giving the order to attack it if it crosses the state border. So he's just saying, who gives a damn whether it's civilian or accidental or not? Just shoot it down. These assholes, they sound just like cops doing a traffic stop. Just shoot the brother. Goddamn authoritarians. So here's something else. Soviet pilot's recollection of the shoot-down. He spoke about it. Contrary to the official statements, he recalled telling ground controllers that they were blinking lights, so the aircraft had its beacon on. He saw the windows and knew that it was a Boeing, a civilian plane. For him, it meant nothing. It's easy to turn a civilian type of plane into one for military use. Well, that's true. He didn't tell the ground that it was a Boeing, and they didn't ask. So he just didn't care at all. He just said, well, it's a plane. I'm going to shoot it. Life is cheap. Life is goddamn cheap. Some more memes about whether or not Russia is a terrorist state. And there is a repeat of fighters posing in the wreckage. Now here's an interesting picture. This was taken earlier in 2014. This is the King of the Netherlands having a beer and being very cordial with Vladimir Putin. I am not sure who she is, but they're all having a great time. That would change later. Blood's on Putin's hands. Hey, by the way, I heard Putin is changing his pronouns to was, were. Was, were. We're going to say goodbye to Putin soon. The bastard. So, more comments. And this has been made into a thread. In fact, if you want to just read it on Thread Reader, look on the lower left and you'll see the URL. Enter that into your browser and you can go there and read this. And then more comments. Look at this. 283 passengers, including 80 kids, 15 crew members, were killed on MH-17. 193 Dutch nationals, 43 Malaysians, 27 Australians, 12 Indonesians, 10 Britons, 4 Belgians, 4 Germans, 3 Philippine nationals, and 1 New Zealander. You know, those are a lot of people from NATO countries. They all weren't from NATO countries, but there were a lot. Consider that. Lots of comments. And of course, there has to be a comment from the Malaysian Prime Minister, somewhat dependent on Russian money. Doesn't want to fight, doesn't want to make waves. And he says Russia is being made a scapegoat for the downing of the Malaysia Airlines flight. They shot it down for fuck's sake. Who else shot it down, huh? Indonesia didn't shoot it down. Philippines didn't shoot it down. Russia shot it down. Let's look at another thread. This is a fairly long thread about how Russian book market prepared Russians for a full-scale war against Ukraine, NATO, the West, and promoted Stalinism and Nazism, and how this was ignored by the West. Keep your seatbelts fastened. You will see a lot of nasty things here. Of course, here's some anti-Western porn. Let's take January 6th and change it a little bit and put these folks here. Who's the artist that did this shit? Fuck that artist. We are going to rumble. One of the first indicators of Russia preparing for a full-scale turn to dictatorship and a global war was the mass production of books about cool sides of Stalin and Stalinism, and about upcoming war against the West. These books appeared on Russian bookshelves in the early 2010s. The early 2010s. MH-17 wasn't shot down until 2014, but there had been fighting in eastern Ukraine by that time. The appearance of these books was so massive that it could not be a coincidence on a book market which was under strict control by the secret police. And it says here, in quotes, "Be proud, not sorry. Truth about Stalin Age. Stalinist Handbook. Stalin's Repressions. Get a lie." Oh, no. Stalin's Repressions. A Great Lie. And Beria. What's that mean? Best 20th Century Manager. What a crock. But see, this is a lot like the Lost Cause pro-Confederate propaganda in the USA. Tell us all that the Confederates were really, really virtuous people and that it was so wrong for the North to fight a war against them. Fuck the Lost Cause. The wave of Stalinist books was so massive that in 2011, a grassroots initiative, Stop Publishing Stalinist Books, emerged with a call for publishing houses to stop, and it was ignored. The idea to create authoritarian and militarist mood through bookstores was brilliant. In 2015, I visited Moscow's central bookstore, Biblioglobus, and that what were goods welcoming you just after the doors. Military uniforms, accessories, and books about Stalin and more. So you walk into the bookstore, the first thing you see are all of this military paraphernalia. I tell you, they know how to play with people's minds. Propaganda is a mind fuck. That's what it is. And if you are not alert, if you are not aware, you will be mind fucked by all of this. So, Sergei continues. This was the prelude. Soon after, the Kremlin started to publish what they called Battle Fantastic, mass-produced, low-quality books about Russian military superiority in all possible conflicts. The whole book series appeared here. Battlefield Ukraine series and Ukraine on Fire. Yeah, fuck them. They're learning how to die. That's what they're doing in Ukraine. Hey, check it out. Now, these are all book covers done by artists, but look at the faces. Is that a Steven Seagal face right there? There's more. There's more. Ukrainian blood. Banderite genocide. The cover picture is Maidan in Kiev. Note the Azov connection to the Nazi. Yeah, right. I think that's an Azov insignia right there. And let's see, missiles being fired against an American AWACS. And usual battlefield artwork. Those fuckers took that right out of Saving Private Ryan. So, what's inside? Here's a typical description. World War III starts on Kiev Maidan. With NATO peacekeepers, start Banderite genocide of Russians, wiping out whole cities. Polava does not exist anymore. Novorossiya fights back. Russia helps. We take Kiev. This is our final battle. So this one has a narrative of Russian genocide. Hey, is this sort of like the white genocide that's driving all of the facets in the U.S. that are shooting up schools, churches, supermarkets and whatnot? Is this a great replacement thing or not? It might be. Sergei continues. As you see, most of these books have the same narrative. Bad Ukrainians act as marionettes of the West. The US wants to destroy Russia, but Russians go into a full-scale war because they are not afraid and are mighty. The same books were published about Georgia, but not so many. Now let's dig deeper into the next level of Russian propaganda. I told you this thread will deal with nasty and scary things. What are these books about? Revanchism. What is the ultimate form of revanchism? History rewriting. See, this is just like The Lost Cause. So Russians created a book genre for this Russian history rewriting genre. Battle Fantastic has its name. Popadancy. That's time travelers. Inspired by the Twains, a Connecticut Yankee, and Harrison's ethical engineer, Russians opened a gold mine of stories on how to make Russia great. So, are these like the Russian megas? Make Russia great again? Yeah, so they took these ideas from these old novels and adapted them to propaganda in modern times. The basic Russian trauma is that they were treated unfairly, and they feel that they don't have the power that they deserve. This is what you learn at school. Russians were conquered by Mongols and lost 300 years of development. Queen Elizabeth denied marriage to Ivan the Terrible. You know what? Fuck Ivan the Terrible. So, look at this final scene of a cult Russian movie, Forward Garda Marines. This discusses a battle which was won by Russians. They can capture Friedrich of Prussia and win the war, but a stupid general orders retreat. This is the culmination of the 1995 movie, which was one of the most popular in Russia back then. The narrator's voice says, "The victory was stolen." Even Russians took Berlin later. That victory was stolen again. Effectively, this is one of the backstab theory movies. So, yeah, just like Nazi Germany. The backstab. There are tons of myths of stolen victories and betrayed Russia. My school teacher told us Alaska was not sold to the U.S. but rented out for 100 years, and the U.S. broke the contract. Nazis in 1920s told about one betrayal in 1914. Russians were fed with tons of such lies. So, back to our books case. How do you want to serve this fundamental hate towards the treacherous West and help Russia win? Easy. Send your patriots to the past to correct it and then win the future. Yes, in Russia they have this book genre and it goes very well. Popadancy. So let's start with some easy reading. Tsar from the future. A guy wakes up in a bloody Russian Nicholas II emperor body, I presume, and he prevents the Russian Revolution, defeats Great Britain, and conquers Istanbul with modern weapons. Russia arise. Jesus, man, this stuff it's so much like the white supremacists and their incels. The ball-tanning Tucker Carlsons of the world. Sink the Brittany. London must be destroyed. Man, it's one crock of shit after another. Compare further, Russian-America Cooperation. A guy jumps into the 18th century, conquers the American colonies, destroys the British Empire, and stops the genocide of Indians. So sweet. But you ask maybe, and what is with Germany and the Nazis? Just wait. One of the greatest Western misunderstandings about Russia is that the West believes Russia is anti-German Nazis. Russia is not. Russia's trauma is that Hitler had broken the Stalin-Hitler alliance and started to kill Soviets instead of to kill other nations with the Soviets. Enjoy Russian dream. Comrade Hitler, execute Churchill. The description. Papa Donetsk gets into Adolf Hitler's body. Will he manage to execute Churchill for war crimes, create an alliance with the USSR? Will comrades Hitler and Stalin defeat the US and get a nuke before the US? Yeah, so they have some butt hurt. Hey, look, is that a Robert Duvall face? They have some butthurt that they were double-crossed by Hitler. Think they should have just collaborated and cooperated and fought Britain and the USA. The Comrade Hitler is the second book by the same author after his Comrade Führer, Blitzkrieg and Triumph. Info on that one is it hits all records of political uncorrectness. Will Hitler crash Britain with successful landing operation? Will the Führer prevent fratricide war against the USSR? So basically this writer was some kind of a fucking Soviet Nazi or Russian Nazi. And it goes on and on and on. Here's one. Assault for the Future. So there's burning London and somewhere there's a burning US tank on the cover. Yeah, okay, I guess that must be it, but that star looks a little odd. So in this fantasy, Nazi Germany joins the Eurasian Union. Atlantic Democratic Union starts World War III. The USSR, the Soviets, are against the hell. A Russian-German brotherhood against the star-striped plague and for world liberation. Basically, these are Nazis in Russia. And they're looking back into the Soviet times thinking, oh, we should have done it all differently. So one cannot mention even 1% of all of these books. So many were published. Sometimes they mix genres. Here, a new Russia pilot awakens in the body of Joseph Stalin's son, Vasily, a war pilot. He wins the war, revealing a Western agent, and he saves Stalinism. Look at these. This face was probably taken from some of the artwork or maybe a screen grab and then touched up by hand by an artist from The Pacific, which ran on HBO. The face, not the uniform. And this one, who's this guy? Looks like another movie face. This is some cheap shit, man. It's not even up to Pulp Fiction quality. Or here, Lieutenant from the Future, GRU against the Banderites. This time they go back in time, they burn down, I think he means Lviv, and arrest Ukrainian politicians, Turchinov and Yatsenyuk. This person goes back and burns down Lviv and arrests Ukrainian politicians, Turchinov and Yatsenyuk, for the motherland, for Putin. You know what? Fuck Putin. This guy's starting to irritate me. He's putting on all of these bad books, and they're really just bringing out my hostility for this shit. Basically, or effectively each of these books is about revanchism, wet dreams. Like this medal for the city named Washington. It's actually an interesting title. Those who are not familiar with Soviet and Russian revanchism will not identify it, but it's a great story. Yeah, here we go. Fighting in D.C., huh? In your wettest of wet dreams, will you ever make it across the Atlantic? So there's more and more of it all. And then there's other art. And then we go back to some more of this stuff. This time they're shooting holes in the Statue of Liberty and dropping nuclear bombs. The latest version was modified with verses of humiliation of Barack and Michelle Obama and ended with the words, "Now we need to go liberate Alaska." Note the picture from US-produced computer game World in Conflict, which Russians love so much. All right, so that's that. Lots and lots of fantasies about being on the wrong side in World War II. They feel betrayed by Germany and they wish that things had worked out differently where they could have teamed up with Nazi Germany and beaten the West and enslaved the world. Fuck them. Let's go back to pictures. So we've seen this posting from Darth Putin. Let's move on. And when it comes to doing things about these folks, when it comes to locking bad guys up in prison or bringing out the weaponry, blowing motherfuckers up, you don't need all of the reasons to take action. You only need sufficient reason. These are my words. Remember that. Especially when dealing with these two motherfuckers right here. Trump and Putin. Don't wait until you have all of the evidence and all of the reasons. When you have enough, and you lock these bastards up. Zelensky. He's a good guy. He's somebody that we should foster ties with. Help his country. And my words at the bottom, not his. World War III has already begun, motherfuckers. Autocracy will destroy you unless you destroy it first. Now, he has said things that are similar in meaning, but those are my words written on the bottom. Indeed, in the last few days, with the purchase of American HIMARS weapons, Ukraine's been blasting the shit out of Soviet armament depots. There's so much ammo that's been destroyed in place by those HIMARS. This one is a fabulous looking cloud going up at night, lighting up the sky. Fuck them. They're going to run out of ammo. They're going to have to fight with sticks and stones. Hopefully the Ukrainians will still have ammo and they can shoot them. And then they'll drop their sticks and stones. The war against autocracy is a war against religious fascists, white supremacists. The choices are A, democracy and justice, or B, smoking rubble, from sea to shining sea. Again, these are my words and it pertains to the situation in the U.S. I'm serious as a heart attack. DOJ, justice keeps the peace. Jail the insurrectionists or they will become insurgents. Then the street will deal with them and it will be horrifying. How much trouble do you want? Oath Keepers, Proud Boys, 3%ers, Patriot Front, QAnoners, Trumpists. Where you go one, you go all. And not one of these skulls or piles of bones, not one of the people here died by natural causes. This was all horrific violence. Don't go there, motherfuckers. Because where you go one, you go all.